So the next thing that's kind of fun to try is to do a ghost print. And what that means is after you've pulled a regular trace transfer image or some sort of print, there's often a little bit of residue left on your plate. So if we hold this up to the light, you can see that there's still quite a bit of ink on the plate, and we're going to try to print that part of the image so it will become almost a negative of the image that we just printed. I'm still going to try using our really delicate, thin washi paper for this technique, and this time I think I'm going to try the smoother side of the paper down so that there's a little more chance that I can transfer the imagery. Normally you'd be doing this on a printing press and you'd be using a lot of pressure and dampened paper, but I think for this exercise we'll see if we can get some of it to transfer on our dry paper. The nice thing is this paper is so smooth that it is pretty delicate and can pick up quite a bit of sensitive detail. So I'm gently smoothing it down onto the plate. I'm trying not to let my rings scratch into the plate so that we can get a nice even imagery. And this process requires a lot of pressure, so we're going to use a little bit of a buffer layer so that we don't accidentally rip our paper as we're burnishing it. So I'm going to just tape down the same paper that we used when we were drawing the trace transfer in the first place, but I'm just really focusing on the area where the image is. So I'll be using a wooden spoon. If you have a baran, you can burnish with that as well, but it's easy to find a wooden spoon around your house, so if you don't have a baran, this is fine. I realize there's some glue or something on here, so I want to try to get that off before we start working. So the goal is to use the belly of the spoon and to press really hard. You should be feeling this in the back of your shoulders if you're doing it right. So we're going to really bear down and we're going to try to transfer all of the image. So I'm going over the whole thing inch by inch. I'll work for a little bit and kind of we'll peek at it, and then I'll probably turn off the video and rub for another 3 or 4 minutes just to make sure I get the image really transferring well. But let's just kind of peek and see if anything's coming across yet, and if it's working okay, just light it in me. Then we'll continue on. So we're getting some of the image to transfer, so I think this is promising. I'm going to go ahead and keep working for a little bit longer. You're going to go, just like move your spoon just a 1/16 of an inch for each stroke, and again, press as hard as you can. Once you go across the whole thing in one direction, then maybe choose a different direction to rub. You don't want to have streaks that show up where your spoon has been rubbed. You want to just cover every inch, probably in 3 or 4 different directions, and you can check your progress as you go as long as you've taped your printing paper down so that it's not shifting around. You don't want to have a double image or a shifted image on your block. So you're going to press really hard. If it's really getting too tiring for you, you can also use the edge of the spoon. Just be a little bit more careful with the edge because it is more likely to tear the paper if you're pressing too hard or if you forget this buffer sheet, and it also is more likely to leave streaks, so you'd have to go over it much more detailed this way. So I'm going to pause for just a minute, and I'll do a little more rubbing, and then we'll show you how it turns out in the end. Okay, so I've been rubbing for probably another 3 minutes or so. I think I've gone over every area pretty thoroughly in a few different directions, and I am really bearing down pretty hard. So let's go ahead and kind of see what we've got. I'm going to pull off the buffer paper first and set that aside. And then we're going to carefully try to peel this back. Now, this is really pretty fine paper, so take your time and be pretty gentle with it. Try not to wrinkle it up too much. It's fairly sticky ink. But I see we've got a pretty good transfer, even without printing it on a press. So peel it back gently, and let me pull the plate out of the way. Show you that. This is kind of thin paper, so I think it shows up a little bit better on it when you put it against the white background. But so that might be a situation where you can use this to some degree. Sometimes it's a little washed out and you might want to overprint with another color. but you can see how it's not exactly it's not a mirror image, but it's a negative reversal of the image. So it's kind of like you've got a photographic negative of your drawing. And that could be kind of a fun thing to use. If it's not a finished enough piece by itself, sometimes you can cut it apart or use it as a sheen collé layer later. And but what's kind of nice is it almost looks like a chalkboard drawing, like you've got white lines on a black background instead of the dark lines that we're used to seeing in a regular drawing. So sometimes it's just kind of fun to see the image develop a little bit differently by printing the ghost image.